If heaven could receive mail, to whom would your love letter to grief be about? Welcome, everyone. I'm Tiffany, your Love Letter to Grief podcast host. If this is your first time listening, please hit the follow button. And if you're a returning listener, welcome back. Today we have with us Redina Doran, a mom who I connected with on TikTok after seeing one of the most heartbreaking yet inspiring posts. Redina, thank you so much for being here. Whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and start your love letter to grief.
All right, thank you. So basically, I wanted to start with, telling a little bit about who I am. And I'm married with 5 kids, and I have a blended family. And when me and my husband met, he had 2 girls, and I had 1 girl. And then together we had a boy and a girl. And so now I'll get into my letter. On July 1st, 2024, just 3 months ago today, our lives were shattered when our baby daughter, Nora, passed away at just 2.5 years old. That Monday, I woke up out of a terrible dream and I dreamt of a funeral. I dreamt of a white casket with gold trim and kids laying over the casket crying, but I never was able to see who was in the dream or who was in the casket. The dream was so vivid and real. I woke up crying and just started praying. It shook me up so bad. I ended up typing it in my notes and even text my aunt about it and talked to a coworker. And I just thought about it the rest of my day at work. I kept praying at work and reading scripture all day. It was almost as if I felt like something bad was about to happen. And I said, I believe 100% God gave me that dream to warn me for what was to come later that day. Now let's go back to the night before the accident. June 30th was a normal Sunday. We all got up ready for church, and it was the 4th of July week, so I dressed Nora in her pretty red, white, and blue smock dress with a red bow in her blonde curly hair. She had the most beautiful blonde curls and striking sky blue eyes. As I took her to Sunday school that morning and was going to go to the adult class, she whined and wanted me to stay with her, so I did. We sat in Sunday school and colored a rainbow and a butterfly, and after Sunday school we went to service, and during church she was being very playful. She kept putting her bow into my hair and just wanted me to be near her. We traced her hand on a sketch pad in my church bag, and after church she napped in my arms. She was definitely a mama's girl. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Take your time.
That night, we got ready for bed, and she laid with me for a while. We snuggled, and then I got ready to take her to her bed. As I carried her to her bed, we always said, I love you so much, and good night. She said, I love you, and good night, Mama, in the sweetest little voice you could ever hear. I never thought that would be the last time. That would be the last time I would see her alive and hold her. Back to July 1st morning, I leave for work before the kids get up, and my aunt lives with us and watches the kids every day. So there's no need for me to wake them up during the summer. All during work, I'm feeling the weight of this dream I had that morning, and I just knew in my spirit I needed to have my mind upon the Lord. As I'm traveling home, I hit a lot of traffic in Huntsville, Alabama. That's where I work. And it took me 2 hours to get home. As I pull in the driveway around 6, I see my husband Tim and our 4-year-old son Brendan by the garage waiting for me to pull in. I get out and give my son a hug. and ask where Nora is because they're always together. And my husband says she's inside watching TV and playing with our puppy. So I came inside and I walked to the living room where my aunt was watching TV, and I asked her, where is Nora at? And she said the same thing. She's watching TV with the puppy. As I'm standing there asking her that question, I looked out our back French doors that lead out to our back deck and swimming pool, and I see all the floats in the pool. I was really confused and even sad, said, why is all the floats in the pool? My mind was trying to understand why. And then I saw her legs there in the middle of the pool. I screamed and took off running, and I opened the gate, dropped the phone. I dropped my phone out of my pocket and jumped in feet first, fully clothed. I flipped her over, trying to make my way out of the pool, and I see she's not breathing. Her face was a little pale, and her lips were a little blue. But other than that, she was completely perfect. I'm screaming the entire time as I'm heading to the deck to give her CPR. Sorry if this is too graphic.
No, it's okay. This is your story, so I want you to feel, safe to share as much as you want to.
Okay. I laid her down on the deck and immediately started CPR. It completely felt like someone else stepped inside my body and I was an outsider screaming. I know all our neighbors heard my screams, and one neighbor ran over and prayed with me as I continued CPR. My husband and children heard my screams and came running and were just helpless. Someone called 911, and I just kept pump breath, screaming, In those moments, I screamed aloud over and over, God, I beg you, don't take my baby. No, you said you would never leave me, Lord. Don't take my baby. Over and over and over. And then the ambulance came and took her to the hospital, and that was the longest drive of my life. All I did was scream and pray. And when we arrived, they took us to a small room, and I knew immediately what was about to happen. Because I've already been in several rooms like this. My cousin, my papa, my sister-in-law, my mother. When the doctors and nurses came in and told us they tried for over an hour to revive her, but she did not make it. My beautiful Nora Claire, my beautiful 2.5 mini-me, my world stopped that very day. At least that's what I felt. They wheeled me into her room, and I got to hold her for a few hours. How do you give enough kisses, enough hugs in those last moments? How do you give enough I love yous? There will never be enough time here on this earth. As I lay there holding her for the last time, a bittersweet visual came to my mind of her first greeter in heaven, my sweet mama holding her grandchild for the first time. And in that moment, a supernatural peace overcame me. Only a peace that God can give, because I know I cannot get through this without Him. Speed forward to her viewing and funeral. There she was, my beautiful blonde curly-haired baby girl, in that same white casket with gold trim that I had in my dream. Her 4 siblings and cousins all laying over her. That was exactly in my dream. Except this was my reality. I sang to her at her viewing and visitation, just like I did every day. I was always singing to her and singing for the Lord. God sent me my little Nora to show me his unconditional love. She was the embodiment of love. She had a mesmerizing aura to her that left a mark on everyone she met. Throughout my journey, I have felt God, felt his supernatural peace, felt his grace, felt his many, many blessings unlike ever before. I have always known God, but until you are in a moment of absolute despair, of absolute brokenness, it is totally different. My kids have always been my number one. Now my day starts with the Lord and ends with the Lord. Because once you give all your burdens and all your cares fully upon the Lord, that's when your life really changes. And my life changed the day she died. The day she died was the day I knew I had to make it to heaven. Not only to see her, but thank my Lord and Savior for being able to be her mama. Now I think of her every time I see a butterfly or a rainbow or a sunset or any of God's beautiful creations. Sorry.
That was wow. That was very very heavy, but I commend you for your strength being able to even make it through that letter just 3 months out. And I think you spoke about your faith in such great length that it makes perfect sense as to why you're able to do that.
Yeah.
I often talk about how people are able to handle grief without faith. And I always say, I can't even imagine how scary that must be for people.
Yeah.
So, just your foreshadowing of the casket.
Yeah. I know. It was powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had experiences, but that was remarkable.
Like, I mean, when you said that, I just got goosebumps because I cannot even imagine.
Yeah.
Like, something's, I mean, yeah, that's intense.
Yeah.
When you saw the casket in your dream, did you feel like it was a child in the dream, or did you not know?
I didn't feel like it was a child. I honestly felt like my dream was all about the Lord and following him and making
Mm-hmm.
sure I'm following the Lord. But also like I did not see who was in there. All I saw was all these children laying over a white
Mm-hmm.
casket with gold trim. Like I never thought it would be one of my own.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and even when I've shared my story on TikTok, I didn't share that piece. There's certain things that I didn't say.
Mm-hmm. I remember right before my husband passed away, there was this moment where I was talking to God, and we had this conversation, and he kept asking me, "Do you trust me?" And there
Yeah,
were a couple of things that happened prior to that were for me very foreshadowing. And even at
yeah,
the moment, I knew it was something. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I was like, okay, he's preparing me for something. This is not, all this is happening for a particular reason. And so,
yeah.
just the fact that you were given that little foreshadowing, do you feel like it, like you mentioned, it did, you feel like it prepared you? How do you
Well,
feel
I
like,
feel, I feel like like, I mean, I pray every day, and I try to read verses every day, but this day was just so heavy. I mean, I almost cried like all day long, and that was before I even knew, you
right,
know,
yeah.
like I was just on the verge of tears. Like I was just so heavy that day. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
I just can't even explain it. I feel like I don't know that it made it better, but it it's hard to even. I know that I know that he gave me that dream. That
Hmm.
I know for a fact that that could have only came from God.
Absolutely.
And and no one can tell me any different, because it was there. I saw it. I saw it all, and if I would have known who it was, or I don't think that would have made it any better either. I feel like you
Right.
can only protect our children so much. And, we had all the gates, we had all the precautions, but it still happened.
Yeah.
And it was just a freak accident. I just remember, like, when my mom died, I was 21 years old, and I wasn't fully, um, I hadn't really given my life to God, fully. And I'm a preacher's kid, so like I grew up in church my whole life, but it was just different. And over a year ago, I had given my life back to God, and I feel like all these things led up to like preparing me, to
Hmm.
pray, to really, really put my prayer life first
Hmm.
and foremost. And um, I mean, that dream was just it was so big for me, and did not know it would become my reality.
Yeah. I can't even, I can't imagine the weight of that, but also like how you say you felt some type of like, I don't know, like, do you feel like it gave you a sense of like understanding in any sense or just,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like he gave me that dream for a reason, to show me that this is bigger than her death, you
mm,
know. Like he sent her to me for only 2.5 years, and she was able to meet all these people, and I never knew that my TikTok would go like viral or whatever,
mm,
like I never thought it would reach that amount of people, and I just I feel like he just put in my spirit, like, if I just lean on him, I'll make it through this.
absolutely. I think, and I heard someone say, this was just recently, I was listening to something and someone said, it must be an honor to know that you were there for someone to love them their entire life.
Yeah,
And I was like,
yeah, that's a
wow.
beautiful thing.
Yeah. So just, and you spoke about just how you were so happy that, you were chosen to be her mom and that she was chosen to be your angel for that short amount of time.
Yeah,
But for anyone that didn't get, because we always talk about how the loss happened.
yeah,
My thing that I want us to think more about is, what did I miss out on? And what did the world miss out on by not getting a chance to actually meet Nora when she was here? Just tell us more about like her personality and who she was.
she was just, she had eyes literally that would like pierce through your soul. Like, think of like the brightest sky blue eyes, okay? And big eyes. And she was just so bright. And when you was around her, like, you just wanted to smile. She was just that. She had that, literally that mesmerizing aura I talked about in my letter. Like, everyone I knew, oh, she's just so cute. Like, she was just bright and super sweet. She was my kindest kid, and I have
Mm.
five. Like, she was the sweetest. Like, we went to the park one day, and she like shared her chicken nuggets with somebody at the park, and she's only
Oh,
two, like, she had that type of love. Like, she had a love for dogs. And one thing I didn't say in my letter was, our puppy actually fell into the pool first, and she went after the puppy.
wow.
So she went in trying to save another life, is how I look at it too. You know, like, she loved dogs, she loved babies. Like, any new baby that came around, she had to hold them. And she was just very fun. And all of her siblings, she was just very attached to them all and just had a great bond with them. Yeah.
That's sweet. And speaking of siblings, because it's only been 3 months, so
hmm
how has it been for the siblings and everyone else afterwards?
I mean, it's very hard. We definitely have our days where it's just weighs extra heavier than others. But um, I her siblings, I mean, they're back at school. You know, they're still in their normal things that they would do,
Mhm.
but they know that they always have a, hey, mom, I'm not having a good day. I need, can you come get me? And um, Brendan, our youngest, he's 4, and him and Nora were super close, best friends, played together all the time, and I feel like, is affected by it the most, um, because his best friend is no longer there to play with, you know. But he also just started preschool this year, so he is around other kids his age. So I think that helps. But they all know, like, they're allowed to speak about her at any
Mhm.
time or with whatever they're feeling. I just leave it really open to them because if I'm having a bad day and I need to talk about her,
Mhm.
then I want them to know that they're able to talk about her too, or look at pictures or whatever it may be. So,
Mhm. Absolutely. I know I often talk about that with people. For me, my daughter was 10 when her dad passed away. And I always tell people that we need to give our kids mental health days. Because it's like you
yeah,
said,
yeah,
imagine how you feel and then think about these little people with these little
yeah.
minds and all these emotions inside of them. So I always, and I tell her, you don't have to make up a fake excuse. You don't have to say you're sick. You can just tell
No,
me, I don't want to go to school today. And it's done. I'm like, okay,
yeah,
that's fine.
yeah,
So I think I love that you
right.
said that because that is something that we need to just be mindful of, that kids are trying to process it. They're watching our every move and
Right,
looking like trying to see how we're handling it. So
right,
that's important.
right.
What do you think has been the of course I'm sure there's just so many things, but what has been the hardest part about grief for you? Because you mentioned you've dealt with grief before. Like you mentioned that
Yeah,
small room at the hospital and the people before your daughter. But what has made
yeah.
this particular loss, like what has been the hardest part?
Probably like the longing for her, like just the actual missing her, like her hug, her embrace, her voice, and every day. And that's probably the worst thing about it, because my day revolved around her. She was the littlest, she was the least independent out of all of my kids, and so my whole days changed without her here. She was my only
Mm-hmm.
one in diapers, still, and things like that. And so I feel like that's really the hardest part, is just like there 1 second and gone the next. And what do you do with that,
Yeah. I think I often talk about how it's always the last. And you mentioned that in your letter as well, the last hug, and how you guys got to spend that
Yeah.
extra time together and the extra
Yeah.
kisses and the extra, moments. And I think for me, it was always just thinking about what was the last of each particular thing that always
Yeah.
kind of stings a little bit more for me.
It does, definitely. Yeah. Because I
Yeah.
remember those days very more vivid than any other time,
Hmm.
because they were so significant. So,
Yeah. What is something that you wish you knew about grief prior to this loss?
um, prior to that, I, like with my other losses I've had, like I said, I just really did not did not completely give it to God completely. Like I felt like the grief was consuming me rather than me holding on to it and letting the Lord help me hold it. Kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
I I wish really I wish I would have knew that before. Maybe I would have dealt with things in life a little different, and not taken every little moment for granted.
Yeah. I think that's one of those things a lot of us feel is just trying to be more like the loss makes us want to be more present.
Yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. It makes me want to enjoy more moments with my kids, because of a mom of five, sometimes my anxiety would be like through the roof
Hmm.
or overstimulation, and things. And now it makes me really want to be less anxious, just enjoy little moments,
Hmm.
and even the smallest of moments. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's someone listening to this podcast today and they're hearing your story. And I'm sure they probably shed some tears because it is just heartbreaking what you've had to go through. What are some things that you would say to a mom that has never experienced this? Just maybe ways to help them be more present.
I've spoken to a few moms actually, a few of my friends that are like new moms, like just really remember every little thing about them. Like I remember holding my kids and just like feeling their hair and that baby smell, just really enjoying every single moment. Try not to be all upset, if you're waking up in the middle of the night by a crying baby, like really just cherish every ounce of it. Because and really just pray and find the Lord before anything like this happens.
Hmm.
And because if you have him, then you can get through anything. I feel like this is the worst thing you can go through is losing a child.
Hmm.
And or at least for me, it was my worst fear. So um I know I wouldn't be here without God. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
I say that all the time, and I just your strength. And I know we people say that, and it's like people always like say to other people, "Oh, you're so strong," and I can't imagine being this strong. And of course, now I always say, "Well, when you have no other option, it happens." But I
Yes.
just want to
Yeah.
say to you, being that today is exactly 3 months to the day, like your
Yeah.
strength and just like I pray that someone hears this podcast and if they unfortunately have to walk through something similar, just hearing your faith and how God has kept you is encouraging to
Yeah.
them to keep pushing. Because sometimes it's not even about trying to get to the next day, it's just trying to get to the next moment for
Yeah,
them to go beyond that.
exactly. Yeah, because there's triggers in every little thing. So, I mean, I haven't touched anything. I mean, her stuff is everywhere.
Hmm.
So, there's triggers in every moment. So, I don't know, just really trying to focus on breathing and and
Right.
just and just and making sure I keep my grief under control. Like I said, just grabbing it, like almost visualize it, like holding it in
Hmm.
your hand. And
Yeah.
you hold that grief, but you also allow the Lord to help you hold it instead of letting
Hmm.
it consume you and throw you into depression and you can't get out of bed or anything like that. I can't allow that to happen. I have other
Yeah.
kids, and I know that her death was meant for bigger. So I know that I have to, whether it be talking to you or talking to TikTok as an outlet,
Hmm.
it's therapeutic for me to talk about her because I
Yeah.
never want to forget.
Right. And that's the thing about grief. Like, it keeps you connected in a way. It's like
Yeah.
it's this, because if the love wasn't so grand, then the grief wouldn't be so great. And so it's just
Right.
almost like sometimes I find myself leaning into the grief. So I love that you say, like, you got to just grab it. Because sometimes that's what I have to do. I just have to completely lean into it. So I love that
Yeah.
you said that. Were there any things that have stood out to you in the past few months that people have done? Because I know a lot of times we watch people go through different situations and we say, man, I wish I could help, or I don't know what to say, or I don't know what to do. Were there any things that stood out to you that someone said or did that really, helped you process better?
I had a few friends, like they sent me some books, um, and I read a good bit, but um, and like during the whole thing, like somebody even in our town like paid for her funeral, and
Wow.
like there was a GoFundMe that raised a lot of money that was able to like hold um was able to pay for like her headstone and everything. And we was able to be off work a little longer because there's no way I could have went back right away.
Yeah.
And not that like money is a big thing,
Mhm.
but
But it's a
sometimes
relief
just
though.
being there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Hmm.
sometimes just being there, not just in the first few weeks, but even after that, calling them up, say, "Hey, how's your day?"
Yeah.
Like just because sometimes in the first week or two, it's like there's so many people around, so many people calling, so
Hmm.
many people texting. But once those moments get quieter and quieter, and people start slowly drifting back into their lives, and it's those are the harder moments.
Hmm.
When you're back to more of the reality and more of the alone times,
Right.
and
Because in
just
your
to stay
letter,
consistent. Yeah,
yeah, in your letter, you actually mentioned that you feel like your world was standing still, and
yeah,
I always think about grief in that exact way.
yeah,
There was an episode of Grey's Anatomy when Derek died,
yeah,
and she was literally just standing still, and it was like everything around her was moving like in fast
yes,
speed. And that's exactly how it is. Now, I always
it
envy
is.
the writers of that show. I'm like, I don't know if it was a room full of widows that wrote that story,
Yes,
but that is exactly what happens. It's like
yeah,
literally your world stops and then everybody else's
yeah,
world keeps moving. And so I
right,
love that you said that because, and of course, people don't do it intentionally because they do have to get back to life and the things they have to do outside of us. And, they want to be there for us. But of course, it gets more quiet, and as the days
yeah,
pass, the phone calls become shorter or the text messages become less frequent.
right.
And I think another question I think is a fair question is, are there, and let's just, and we can be honest, and if there's not anything, that's perfectly fine too. Are there any things that you wish people would have done for you since you're so early in? And maybe this can just be something helpful for someone that's listening.
I don't really know. I feel like I had a really great support system, um,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't really know what I wished for. I mean, I know my mind was not great in the first few weeks for sure. My days faded into days, and I didn't even know what day it was. Like
Mm-hmm.
it, it was just such a blur. Um, I can't think of anything that really somebody should have done.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And I
which is
always
not
tell
bad to
people,
have.
yeah, amen. And anytime I hear people talk about their support in this such a heavy stage, it's always such a blessing because I've
Yes,
talked to people who don't have that, and it's like it's so
yes,
heartbreaking because
yes,
it's such a dark and isolating thing already. And so
right,
just having a supportive love around you and other people who are praying on your behalf goes a long way.
right.
I always tell people, if you can't do anything else, just pray and let me know that you're praying,
Absolutely,
because sometimes
absolutely.
getting that text message saying, "Hey, I just said a prayer for you," you feel it. So it's like
Yes,
God's
that's
protection
exactly
around
right.
you.
That's
Yeah.
exactly right. And that's what I told everyone. Like whenever I had wrote a eulogy on Facebook, and it was a beautiful eulogy, but I had put at the bottom, people are asking what they can do for me. Pray for me. Go to church for me. You know,
Hmm.
just be in the presence of the Lord for me.
Yeah.
And that's the best thing you can do, really.
Yeah. My book is titled Love Letter to Grief, Learning to Walk by Faith. And I usually have a lot of questions to ask about faith, but I love how everything you've talked about has been exactly that. It's been about
Yeah.
your faith. And I know you mentioned when you found your daughter that you were like, God, you promised me that you wouldn't forsake me. And I
Yeah.
remember having the same exact conversation with God myself because in my loss, I felt like He had done that. And God had to remind me that His promise wasn't that life was going to be perfect, but His
Yeah.
promise was going to be that I wouldn't have to go through this imperfect life by myself.
Yes,
And I think that's the
absolutely.
thing we oftentimes forget, that it's not about everything being happy and good. It's about God being there with you when those times come up.
Absolutely. I mean, he never said we wouldn't walk through tribulation. He said we
Hmm.
would,
Right. Yeah.
but we're not alone in that.
Hmm. Yeah.
And then
So,
another verse that I really fell in love with was John 13:7, and it says, Jesus said, "What I do, thou knowest not now, but thou shalt know hereafter." Like, I don't know why he sent her to me for only 2.5 years, but I
right.
will know one day,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
hard
I love
concept to
that.
think about, but
Right. And I love that you were able to see like the full circle moment of her life, just being able to see
yeah,
the people that she impacted, and even after, like she's still impacting people. Like she's impacted,
yeah,
like I say, I saw your TikTok and I was like so inspired by it, and I
yeah,
cried. I was like, wow, like you know, I think when we hear of stories of what people are going through, although it's heartbreaking, it's still like it's something about just the faith in it all. It just gives
yeah,
us encouragement.
yeah, and it makes our little things seem so small.
Hmm.
It makes us really focus on what matters, and that's what matters.
Yeah. Do you have a song that, because every time I lose somebody, I adopt a song, and it's the song that I listen to over and over and over. Is there any song that you listen to that reminds you of her a lot?
Oh my goodness! So I'm a huge CC Winans fan,
Oh, me too.
and and at her funeral we played "Come Jesus Come."
Mm,
And that song is just, gosh, every time I hear it. Sometimes there's days where I can't listen to it because
yeah.
it's just too heavy.
Hmm.
But other days when I'm just like, that, when we played it, I literally was like, just come now, Lord. Just, just take me now,
Yeah.
Lord. And that, it just makes me think of her for sure. And I'm actually
Yeah.
going to her concert in April, and I'm going to be a
Oh.
basket case. But
And she better sing that
But
song.
she better.
Cece, if you're listening.
Yes. But
Yeah,
it's a beautiful song.
it is. Yeah. One of my favorite songs that I'm listening to right now on repeat is CC Winans' "Goodness of God." I can't
Yes.
stop listening to it. I listened to it before I came here to record the episode, so it's on
Yes.
repeat. And it's
All
just
the
something about
time.
like the way she sounds and just the message in all of her songs.
Yes. Yes. I just love it.
Okay, so my next question I want to ask you, because I always want to make sure that I'm reaching people that are maybe listening that are going through the exact same journey, because I often
Hmm.
talk about my grieving process. Losing my husband is going to be completely different from someone that's lost a child. I can
Yeah.
empathize with you, of course. Like I say, I understand the pain of it, but I don't absolutely understand the exact relationship of that loss. And so, for anyone that's listening that is a mother that is grieving a child, are there any things? Is there anything that you like to say, just encouraging to them, or just maybe help them along the way?
Yeah. What has worked for me is just I really just dug into my Bible more and just pray every day that he just gives me the strength to get to the next thing I got to do. Life keeps going forward, and there's babies being born in the family, and birthday parties, and and holidays coming up, and you think about, but she's not here. I think about
Mm-hmm.
those moments, and like those are the hard moments where it's like she won't have that.
Mm.
but just give yourself time is what I would say. Is just, if you can't do it, you can't do it. I mean,
Mm.
just give yourself that moment, that time, to just have your peace. Just just have go sit by the water, and things like that. And even for me, that's hard. My swimming pool is,
Mm.
was supposed to be, a family place that we enjoyed and we did for a long time, but now it's hard to even look at for me, but
Yeah.
in lots of moments I've been able to actually sit out there, and I went out there and just read my Bible and just prayed, that he'll, and I'll think about more of the good things. I'll remember more of the good times we had there
Mm.
rather than just her death, and
Yeah.
just give yourself grace, give yourself time, give your family time and grace too, because my husband doesn't grieve the same way I do. And that's, at times I was like, I'm alone, or he felt alone, but we're just grieving differently. And then,
Yeah.
and our kids grieve differently, but we just all have to really give each other grace that,
Mm.
just to show love more and just give it all to God. That's all I can say, really.
Yeah. I know I was talking to someone else a few episodes back, and we talked about how you can have in this situation, you and your husband both are grieving the same loss, and then you have your
Yeah.
children. And although you feel like, oh, well, we can grieve together, and you mentioned it perfectly. Everyone is it's such an isolated situation. Like everyone individually has to grieve. You can be there for
Yes.
each other, but it's something that you have to individually go through.
Yes.
Have you been able to? How have you and your husband connected with the grieving process?
Honestly, for probably a month, we didn't really, it was like we were just coexisting
Mm.
for a little while, because I was just so distraught, and he was distraught too, but he would be more alone in his moments, or, you know, he just really wanted to kind of isolate himself and just think about her when he was just by himself or whatever. But for me, I wanted to be around people.
Mm.
I didn't really want to be alone, kind of thing. So we definitely did grieve differently, and we still are a little bit, but we've now come back to where, like, we understand that, we were both hurting, both very much hurting, and it's just very hard to, one person is not going to have the same experience as the other, and we all just grieve totally different, but we're working on it. We're just
Mm.
trying to just continuously just give each other grace and love no matter what.
Yeah. And just to speak a little bit briefly about the way she passed, because I know you mentioned the swimming pool. Is there
Hmm.
anything that you want to say as far as like awareness for that, or? And I know you mentioned that you had to administer CPR. Is there anything that you want to kind of highlight or talk about with that
Yeah.
for anyone that's listening?
Um, yeah, I mean, we had gates. We had gates on our deck. My husband had just built the deck, and we had gates that she could not open, but
Mm.
her sisters had went swimming that day, and they didn't close the gate all the way. And so that's something they might carry with them, is the weight of her passing away, and I've had to talk, with them and just say, hey, like, I don't want you to feel guilty about this. I don't want you to feel bad about this, but I just want y'all to be aware, make sure absolutely shut the gate,
Mm.
like it's, things like that. But I mean, I do think swimming lessons are good, even for smaller children. And like, I didn't do that with them, but like, I've been swimming my whole life, and I taught my oldest daughter how to swim, and my 4-year old, I had been teaching him how to swim. And Nora, like, we always wore those puddle jumpers,
Mm.
floats, and she would do so good in that. But just so happened that her float was in the house that day. Like she might have grabbed it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Awareness really, I guess, is just make sure that, you know, for any reason that they absolutely can't get on, you know, the deck or around the pool. And we always thought, you know, too, that we had all the precautions, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
yet sometimes whenever there's more than one person watching them, that's when it's worse. You
Yeah.
know, because you'll think that person's got them, and they'll think that person's got them. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
just really, really just pay more attention. You know, and I mean, I like to say we watch our kids very closely, and we do,
Right.
but you know, you can't watch them in every single moment and just teach them. You know, I even taught
Mm-hmm.
her at a young age, like, do not get near the pool. Don't
Mm-hmm.
even get on the deck. She knew better, you know, but she was also very young too, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, and the reason it's called an accident is because it's exactly that. You know, it's like
Yeah,
we can do everything, we can do every prevention that we can think of, and
yeah,
things still happen. So I love that you're letting your kids know, reminding your kids that they're not, it's not their fault. And, you know,
right,
these, unfortunately, it happened, but it's not, you know, it's not anyone's fault. And we can do everything that we can to try to make sure we're taking care of our kids and covering everything. But it's like you say,
right.
there's not enough eyes in the world, you know.
Right,
So,
right. And like I said, the Lord just put all these stumbling blocks or these things in our way that we couldn't be with her right in that moment.
hmm.
And that's
But you
when I
haven't said how
know,
long your drive was home. It was 2 hours that day. How
yes,
long does it typically take you to get home?
it normally takes me 45 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean my aunt just thought she was watching TV because that's where she was, and
Mm-hmm.
she didn't even know she had went outside. And my husband was home. He was outside even when this occurred, you know, and it just goes to show like they can just slip away from you in an instant, and
Yeah.
it's just it's scary. You don't want to live your life super fearful either, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
just I mean, I just never thought it would happen, but it's very hard.
Yeah. And you did mention the holidays coming up. So have you thought of anything that you're going to do for the holidays to try to make new traditions or new memories for your family?
Yeah, I think I just really want her to be more present, which is odd to say because she's no longer here.
Mm-hmm.
But like I have pictures of her everywhere in my house. And like I'm doing a big Thanksgiving at home. Like I can't compartmentalize. I can't pack up all her things and pretend she didn't
Right.
happen because she very much so did. And
Mm-hmm.
I never want to forget that, you know? So like I've thought about for Christmas, I want to make her her own little small tree, you know,
Oh.
with ornaments on it, you know, just
Mm-hmm.
things that she loved, Bluey and Minnie Mouse and things like that. You know, I just want to do more things to celebrate her life rather than try to dwell on
Mm-hmm.
she's not here to enjoy it with me. But I haven't even thought about really Thanksgiving. Maybe I'll make a plate for her. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just don't want it to feel like I don't want anyone to feel like they can't talk about her to me
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that because I can't pretend like she didn't happen.
Yeah.
She
I
will
always
always
tell
be a part of me.
people, yeah, I always tell people like sometimes people are afraid to talk. They're like, well, I don't want to make you sad by bringing up your child. And I always tell people, there's not a second that goes by that someone who lost someone that meant the world to them doesn't know that that person's no longer there. So don't be afraid to reach out to someone and mention
Right.
and say the person's name. Like, don't just talk around it. Like, say the
Right.
name. Like, speak about the memories because that makes us feel
Yes.
like you're missing our person too, which means a lot to us.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Like I've had people like send me a butterfly, a picture of a butterfly or whatever, and like this made me think of Nora, you know, or and I'm like that is meaningful. That's very much
Hmm.
meaningful.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. Well, just in closing, is there anything else that you want to share with us about your story and the triumph that that you've shown? I mean, like, I don't want to say I'm proud of you, but I'm so proud of you because, like, I know how heavy grief can be. And just
Yeah.
to see your walk with God and just to see your resilience is really something.
Well, I would say, when before my mom died, my mom had went through a really bad grief as well. My cousin, which she was, or he was like, her son as well. He had died at 22, and my mom went through 6 years of just really horrible grief, and she was depressed all the time. She could barely get out of bed. She was in she had migraines all the time, and it was like she stopped living the day that he died.
Mm,
And I had that come over me, after losing Nora. I thought to myself, I cannot allow myself to stay in the bed. I can't allow myself to just stay in my grief. I got to take it headstrong
mm-hmm,
and just really just work through it day to day. Every day's different, but I have to face it. I can't ignore it, and just hold on to my faith that I'll make it there one day and I'll see her again. And just to continue pressing on with the Lord. That's really all I can do, and show that, show how I've faced this for my kids to know that they can overcome anything.
mm-hmm,
He made us an overcomer by the power of our testimony, and we have to overcome things in life. And if I can overcome this horrible, the worst thing that I'll hopefully ever face,
mm-hmm.
you know, I know that they can make it. I know that they can make it through, and I hope that they will look at me and think, I can make it. I can make it. I'll be okay, no matter what they face, no matter what they go through.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, of course, the podcast, in the beginning, I talk about if heaven could receive mail. So, if heaven could receive mail, of course, your letter would be to Nora. And what is the
yeah.
one thing that you say to her?
Probably, probably just I love you, basically. And sorry I couldn't be there in that moment.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for being on here today. I really appreciate you. This episode and all others can be found on our YouTube channel, Love Letter to Grieve. Thank you to everyone listening. And if anyone in your circle is interested in penning a love letter to grief or appearing on our podcast, you can contact us directly at lovelettertogrief@gmail.com. Thank you again so much for being on our show.
Thank you.